Mr. Andrew Keyes. Mr. Keyes embarked his earlier years as a constituent of the Distinguished Tuskegee Airmen, Inc., to become one of America's first black military men. Along with this honor, he served as a mechanical engineer for the U.S. government. After completion of his service duty, he received an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army. His spirit will be treasured in the hearts of his loving family, who have his memories to sustain them. Mr. Keyes was also one of the Tuskegee Airmen that was honored in the legacies of documented original Tuskegee Airmen upon their death by enshrining them into the Lonely Eagles. Thank you for your service, Mr. Andrew Keyes. More than 80 years ago, when it was thought by many that African Americans were incapable of piloting airplanes, Vernon Kingsley Sport knew he could. After several tries, in 1942, he was enlisted in the Army Air Corps, becoming an aviation cadet at Moton Field in Tuskegee, Alabama, later to become known as the famed Tuskegee Airmen, the Red-Tailed Angels. Mr. Sport was part of the 332nd Fighter Group, who escorted American bombers in World War II against Germany without losing one single airplane. Mr. Sport was also one of the main organizers of the East Coast for the March on Washington in 1963. Thank you for your service, Mr. Vernon Kingsley Sport.
Chapter, and I saw these distinguished gentlemen at the front, and it turns out that Val Archer was one of those gentlemen. After the ceremony, he came over and he started talking to me and asking me, about my program, and said, hey, we've been trying to start a youth program in Atlanta. While we're trying to look around and find one, you've got one already put together in a nice little package. Fast forward, I moved to Atlanta, connected with Val and with a group of wonderful supporters. We implemented that first camp. And so it's grown so much over the years, and we've learned so much. But I'll tell you, Val was there every step of the way. Whenever I was a school teacher for a number of years, so whenever there was an event at the school, Val was there. You could always count on it.
First job with Delta was in 1968. I started off in maintenance. In those days, the goal was to just join Delta in any department, any area, just to get your foot in the door. I, took flying lessons, to obtain all of my certificates. In 1976, Delta announced they were going to hire. So I said, I'm going to fill out the application. I think I'm ready. They called and said, you passed everything. We'd like to offer you a job in flight ops if you would accept. And so I did. Just a few years removed from the 60s, which was the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act. Sam Grady was the very first African-American pilot hired at Delta. And I remember one of our old schedulers, they called him Coach. Coach called and said, Cal, I have a trip for you. I signed in the next morning. It said S. Grady. And I said, is this Sam? And it was Sam. He walked up. He said, good morning. How have you been? I said, fine. And we shook hands. And he said, you see, we're flying together? And I said, yeah, I did. We would land in Birmingham, in Jackson, Mississippi. And that gate agent would come up to the aircraft to retrieve the times and the fuel remaining, etc. And you'd get the double take like, I can't believe it. Both of you guys are black, in the cockpit. We were in the deep south. So we were the first all African-American cockpit crew in the history of Delta Airlines. I was always a believer that ability does not come with skin color. If you're male or female, it doesn't matter. If you have the ability and the drive and the desire, nothing else matters.